Good afternoon, everybody. We're just going to give a few more minutes for some people who have registered to join us, just in case they're encountering those well-known problems with our wonderful online technologies that we're now endeavouring to use on a daily and minute-by-minute basis. So we'll be with you in a few minutes. Right, I think we'll make a start, if that's all right with everybody. If other people join us, there will be a recording, so I'm sure they'll be able to roll back to the beginning and catch up if they need. The most important person is here, that's the brewmaster, so I'm delighted to welcome John Tebbs. You'll be meeting John very shortly. Good afternoon, John.
Afternoon, all afternoon. Actually, I was getting a bit concerned there. I was sitting there in the lobby and was like, are they not going to invite me in?
It's a little like waiting at the bar, John. So, none of us are ever going to get good at it, are we? So, but as we will find out very shortly, the wait will be worthwhile. So I'll bring you back in a minute, John. I'm just going to do a short introduction. Thank you for joining us. There's quite a throng on the webinar this afternoon. I'm delighted to say, along with John, we've got some fantastic guest speakers. First of all, you'll be hearing from Jason Liggins from Crown Commercial Service. Jason has worked with our business over a number of years now in a number of different roles. So great to see Jason here today. He's a welcome face for a fantastic subject matter. Following Jason, we'll be then listening to Steve Hall from Crown Hosting. Steve brings to the afternoon a wealth of experience in hosting solutions and already manages and knows a number of people on the call. So he'll be a familiar face to some and a new face to others. So thank you for joining us, Steve. Looking forward to your piece. Following Steve, I'll give you a brief summary of where we are in the equation, why we're at the table, what we bring, why we're different, and hopefully how we may be able to help one or all of you in the near or distant future. So hopefully that'll be of interest. And then following myself, I'll bring you my colleague and co-director, Chris Boyes. Chris and I have actually worked together in a number of companies over 20 years now, and I'm grateful for him for joining the team and guiding our cloud services over the last 18 months to where we are today. You'll be delighted to hear from him and some of his experience because he's very much the technical side of the equation from Trust Systems today. So any searching questions on the technology, please, will be directed in his direction. And then I'll do a final wrap up for you and a quick summary. But hopefully throughout the event, you'll be able to listen to John's explanation of the beers. Hopefully you're somewhere warm and sunny. And if not, you've got a view of the garden. And I hope you enjoy the next couple of hours. So without further ado, am I introducing John? John, I'm going to hand the microphone over to yourself and you can introduce your first beer, please.
Fantastic. Thanks so much, Mike. So we'll be starting off with Lumina, which is one of what we call our core range of beers, a few range of beers that we always have available. Obviously, being a craft brewer, we brew a lot of beers, but this is one you can get at all times. It's what we call a session IPA. So what that means is basically a bit lower in ABV than some of our other beers. It's at 4.2%. Very cool thing about Lumina as well, it's also gluten-free. We do a range of gluten-free beers. You know, one of our real philosophies at Siren was we want beer to be available for everyone. Luna in particular is one we've brewed since 2019. It sort of came in pre-lockdown, and it's actually nowadays our best-selling beer. Soundwave, which we'll be looking at later, and which you'll see a lovely graphic for behind me here, is our flagship IPA, but Lumina these days is our top-selling. So the idea of Lumina, lovely 4.2%, just pures, beautifully clear with that nice foamy head, really easy drinking, something, as I say, you know, with a session IPA that you can just go through a few quite happily. Hopefully you're all having a sip and then agreeing with me that it's going very well there. We use several malts in there. We use Maris Otter. So Maris Otter is basically the workhorse of the brewing world. More or less every beer will have a bit of Maris Otter malt in there. It's a pale malt. Malts basically but vary from pale to dark simply or based on how long you roast them. So the Maris Otter malts, not roasted for very long. We also have some malted and flaked oats in there. Oats are really good for giving body to a beer. You know, imagine you have a nice thick porridge in the morning with oats. You know, it's not quite the same idea with a beer, but it is a similar idea. We've also got, in fact, 5 different hops in there. We've fiddled with that balance a lot since we reduced the beer in 2019. But these days we have Hallertau Blanc, which is actually more often used in a lager. You know, very nice sort of gooseberry, grass, grapes, lemony kind of notes in there. Mosaic, which is an American hop. Hallertau Blanc is German. And you really get some really nice bitter flavors from that. So you're thinking, you know, what we like to call high alpha acid, which basically means it gives those really bitter notes. And then, you know, stone fruit, pine, mango, things like that, you'll all get from that. Chinook, again, really one of those bittering notes, pine, a little bit of spice in there as well, a little bit of citrusy in the form of grapefruit and things like that. Azaka, another fantastic hop, mango, pineapple, and pine. Again, you know, some of these hops doing similar jobs, but obviously all coming together in unison to make a lovely beer. And then lastly, we have a hop Euconaut, which really is bringing in the full citrusy. It's lemon, it's lime, it's grapefruit, it's all those lovely citrusy flavors that you really want in a nice session style IPA. We like to call Lumina our shining light of a beer. You know, it's gentle, it's not too heavy. If you're not massively into your craft beers, it's maybe want to really get yourselves involved, and then we can start moving on to the heavier stuff a bit later on.
Thank you, John. Well, I've got to thank Nutanix for inviting us to get involved in one of their Brutanix events, which this is being held this afternoon, and also for the introduction to John and the Siren Brewery and the vast range of beers we've been passed today. So thank you for that. Right, I'm going to move on to Jason Liggins. As I said before, Jason is working with the Crown Commercial side, a group that you'll know very well. And without further ado, I'll leave you in his safe hands. Thank you, Jason.
Thanks. Good afternoon. Thank you everyone for joining us today. I've got my beer. I'm glad I'm up first because third time this will go really quickly and you won't learn a great deal. So next slide, please, Beth. So what we're here to talk about today is what we used to call back office IT and where to locate it. That's all of the IT and applications that are not in your hand or on your desk, but rather the servers, data storage, and applications that are the realm of your IT services team. This is typically a line of business applications, but it could also be the supporting infrastructure to your handheld or desktop IT. This infrastructure is traditionally held on premises, in server rooms, and potentially data centers. More recently, the advent of cloud has outsourced the physical elements of this, and we consume cloud as 3 different service models provided through 4 different deployment models. The question faced by our leaders is twofold. Where should we deliver the business services from, and does that offer the best value for money? The technical advice provided by the Cabinet Office through the Technology Code of Practice, Cloud First, and similar guidance is to pursue a change path towards adoption of public cloud as the deployment model. This is in recognition that the whole business world is moving towards this, and public sector can ride on the coattails of this movement, benefiting from the R&D invested by the suppliers as a result of this huge aggregated demand. However, the path to public cloud is not easy. Arguably, we've been on it for at least 10 years. The 2022 policy, Transforming for a Digital Future, though, recognises that whilst public cloud is here, And now for some, for others, it's still a distant aspiration. And there's a whole rainbow of IT service delivery models in between. Next slide, please. The role of Crown Commercial Service is to enable procurement by public sector buyers. I'm glad to see some of you here today. Hello. Putting in place legally compliant frameworks that enable good value for money for the public purse. This requires, though, for us to predict the future need. It takes us around 2 years to launch a framework, and each will typically operate for between 2 and 4 years. So the question posed was that, given that it's that a desirable digital destination is public cloud, when will we no longer need other delivery mechanisms? When can CCS stop providing alternate procurement routes? That needed us to make a judgment about how much of our business services are already in public cloud and what the compound annual growth rate of adoption of public cloud is. Both of these figures are really quite hard to come by. Compound annual growth rates are normally measured by spend, but how do you accurately compare the growth of spend in things that have very different quantums of cost? To use an analogy, as a parent drinking beer at 5 o'clock in the afternoon, not even that, the annual inflation of my children's pocket money does have an impact on my monthly expenditure, but the impact in pound, shilling and pence is much smaller than that of my new fixed rate mortgage, which is costing hundreds of pounds per month more. The question of how much is already in cloud you can't answer with spend, simply because a unit of workload can cost 2 or 3 times as much to operate under one model than another. So again, it's not apples for apples. Spend is also confused by the deployment model question. So is cloud that lives on a dedicated platform that you have sole use of, but is called public cloud by a vendor actually public cloud, or is it private? I'll leave that question open. Is the professional services provided alongside your cloud adoption also part of public cloud, or is it IT services? However, surveys of technology leaders have an opinion, and they say that public cloud has between 10 and 30% of total workloads today. And note, though, that this has not changed much in the past 5 years, but it does give us a pin in the map to start from. Now, whatever your belief in how much is already in public cloud and what the compound annual growth of adoption rate is, what is clear to us, spend against all delivery models is growing. None, including that of traditional IT, have plateaued. The majority of spend is elsewhere than public cloud currently, and arithmetic projection suggests that this will still be the case in 10 years' time. So we need to keep planning for delivery of traditional IT service models and their more modern equivalents, including private cloud. Next slide, please. It means that the current blend of the various delivery models of IT services is here to stay, and at CCS we need to provide procurement routes for them. This is a very simplistic decision tree reflecting the approach to change for a given line of business applications. I have a more detailed one that I've worked through with CDDO that I can step through anyone that is interested, but let's do it offline another time without a beer in front of me. Within those decisions are a number of things to balance. The current ongoing operational cost, that is in terms of money, but also carbon, the capital cost of change, the future ongoing cost in terms of money and carbon, and the value that the change brings to you. What we at CCS, in collaboration with Cabinet Office, have done is design policy and procurement to reflect the hybrid nature of IT service delivery. But importantly, avoid the do nothing option. Do nothing reflects, if it's not broke, don't fix it attitude. But staying static in an IT world that is subject to continuous change is a recipe for technical debt. Public cloud is a world of continuous change. We as public sector need to change our static culture and adopt that continuous change model. Next slide, please. So I mentioned earlier the 2022 policy, Transforming for a Digital Future. This policy is designed to help organisations through that change decision tree with specifics the organisations need to consider. And it has been endorsed by the National Audit Office when they looked at the past 25 years of digital change and where things have and have not gone to plan, recognising that digital transformation of line of business applications is complex. I picked out mission 4 of the policy and 6 of the actions appropriate for back office IT. I should recommend that you go read this policy. It's not long, it's not complicated, and it's full of common sense. Crown Hosting hits all 6 of these actions mentioned on this slide. It's centrally procured. It uses the most modern of technology, and as a result, is environmentally fantastic. It's appropriate and it's secure hosting, and it enables remediation. More of that when we go on to Chrome hosting in a few minutes. Next slide, please. So taking the policy into account, it's fairly clear where back office workloads should not be. They should not be in server rooms in our offices, nor should they be in small data centers. This includes new build your own facilities. Unfortunately, we have some organizations still spending large capital sums on new and upgraded data centers or server rooms with high ongoing costs. And that still seems to be a higher value option for some than public cloud or Crown hosting. But DIY in this case is not a good decision. Server rooms and small data centers are comparatively expensive in terms of money and carbon, offering poor value to the public purse. And public sector has a poor history in maintaining such facilities, and they're typically insecure and unreliable. We simply cut too many corners and there is no scale. Our aim should be to move our applications from the left to the right of this slide so that we can benefit from the potential future value brought by hosting alongside other customers. The right-hand box on this slide represents delivery from public cloud only, our ultimate destination. The middle box represents Crown hosting as a logical and physical location. Customers that have relocated their IT to Crown hosting facilities have available to them all of the deployment models, including both ends of the spectrum. That is traditional IT that you put in a server room and public cloud, plus everything else between. Our sponsor today, Trust, and the other providers that live within Crown hosting premises and the middle box, and they can help bridge that gap from left to right. Next slide, please. So Crown hosting is a unique service within CCS, different from all other technology frameworks. It is at its heart a contract with a single buyer, that's Cabinet Office, for the provision of data center co-location from a single supplier. That is also a JV with partial ownership by Cabinet Office. The JV supplier is called Crown Hosting Data Centers Limited, and you'll hear from its CEO, Steve Hall, in a few minutes. But what it does, it enables a very tight coupling between Cabinet Office policy and service delivery, a set of catalogue services with fixed, index capped and collared prices, standardized security and resilience reflecting the security policy framework, and centralized governance and control. Cabinet Office is the central procuring entity, and public sector organizations can then take occupation of space within the facilities very quickly through an access agreement with Cabinet Office. There's no procurement process. Everything is already done. You just need to sign up and place an order. It's very quick to take occupation of your space, typically a month, but equally quick to exit with termination for convenience in as little as a month. I've just seen Steve's message. Take as long as you like, Dowson. You started early. Next slide, please. So what you can buy from Crown Hosting is really simple. It's space in public sector only data halls, either sharing them with other public sector peer organizations or private to you. Think of it as like shared office space, but only for your IT. And each of your racks, that's the equivalent of a desk, is private to you. Around this core service offering are a number of ancillary services, things that are necessary for any organization to occupy data center space. Electricity and network connectivity are obvious examples, but others include help and assistance with relocation from where you are today, on-site help and assistance so that you don't have to send people to site. Next slide, please. So why have we set up Crown Hosting? A serious advantage that hyperscale cloud providers have is scale. We needed the same sort of scale for traditional ICT and also the rainbow of services that we use that are not public cloud, but do it in a way that does not disadvantage public cloud. We needed to combine and unify public sector as a buyer and its demand altogether. And we've taken space in enormous hyperscale data center facilities, each able to host hundreds and thousands of servers. This brings with it an unprecedented economy of price, but we also ride on the coattails of other occupiers of these sites. We are a smaller occupier, and the others include multinational corporations, private industry, including public cloud suppliers, telecommunication companies, systems integrators, and public sector suppliers. Because the sites are so large, they bring with them seriously professional facilities, and cornerstones of these facilities are carbon net zero, reliability, security, and low total cost of ownership. Next slide, please. This slide summarizes some of the key benefits of crown hosting. The efficiency of the facilities is such that compared with the public sector average, customers use a quarter of the electricity compared to before they move. That's a 75% reduction in electricity, avoidance of use. Data centers use a huge amount of electricity, and that alone is justification for relocation. And in the majority of cases, pays for those relocations in less than 12 months. Avoidance of use of a resource is the best sustainability message going. But we can add to that, all electricity that is consumed is green sourced with zero carbon emissions. We can't quite say 100% carbon savings, but we're very near. Cost of occupation is very low, and typically customers will save £3 for every £1 spent compared with prior costs. We benchmark and price control the services, and in 2022, the blended price for what customers actually bought was less than half the market price for the equivalents. Last year alone, we reported that occupying customers saved around £150 million in direct costs and carbon emission savings equivalent to all the forests planted in England the prior year twice over. The service is quietly used by many organisations with critical systems, as the sites are set up for all security classifications, all threat levels, are reliable, and unlike building leases, do not require a long-term commitment. Next slide, please. Now, the previous slide was all about direct savings. Indirect savings are an important part of the crown hosting story. Crown hosting by itself can't answer all your IT needs. And similar to the topic in the news, home working versus office working argument, providing a very large ecosystem of public sector organisations together with their suppliers, other industries, enables things that are just not possible individually and locally. IT services that are not viable in your own server rooms are viable in crown hosting. It brings the total cost of ownership of your IT services down, and all of it is done with minimal carbon emissions. The sponsor of this webinar today, Trust, is part of that ecosystem, and you'll hear a little later from Chris and Mike about how Trust can help you. Next slide, please. I put this slide in to remind you and me that CCS is there to help. Crown hosting is a cornerstone framework in that it provides a location for physical ICT. Its terms and conditions are tuned specifically to facilities management, plus a limited set of essential services. And CCS operates a portfolio of interlinking and overlapping framework agreements. Each framework has terms and conditions tuned to its own focus of services so that you can receive the best value for money for what you need to buy. This can sometimes seem daunting, but there are people like me that can help guide you through this. Next slide, please. This is quite a complicated slide and sums up about 5 I have from another deck. If you want to know more, then ping me and we can go through it in more detail. Again, well, I don't have a beer in front of me. But it summarizes the hard-won learning of about 150 public sector organizations on their digital journey. The question is how do I progress through my digital journey from traditional ICT to public cloud and reduce my total cost of ownership as I go? So don't have a higher than my cost now through that journey. It's not unusual for organizations to seek additional funding to facilitate change, but what this model pathway does is do away with that need and fund change through a business as usual activities. So save money as you go. Now, continuous change is business as usual industry. We as digital leaders need to instill this culture in public sector. If you do nothing, then your costs are unlikely to decrease. If anything, they'll increase with inflation and your own general growth. So the first step is to relocate your IT as is, unchanged, to crown hosting. Physical lift and shift. It's not as risky and scary as it might first appear. We've relocated thousands of racks now without a problem. This will reduce your electricity costs. potentially your network and IT service costs without any actual change than physical location and some new network kit. You have a number of choices. The majority of organizations do all of them. If you're scheduled for a technical refresh, i.e. a rehost, then this is an opportunity to consolidate your infrastructure and reduce your costs further. Your saved money is already in your budget, so it can be spent elsewhere within your IT. This is your opportunity to spend for change without resorting to additional funding. Ultimately, we're working towards a fund for redevelopment or refactoring or re-architecting, whichever term you like for this, of the way in which you deliver the business outcomes, so that the IT services element is done from cloud, preferably public cloud. But you have choices that include rehosting in private cloud, community cloud, and as a hybrid of these, and with public cloud, all along the way. Each step provides savings for reinvestment. Relocation to ground hosting is just the first of those. Next slide, please. This is really my Q&A slide. I do get a lot of objections from potential customers to relocating to ground hosting. The majority can be summed up as inexperience on the part of customers to data center relocation, and secondly, worry about change. The first we can set aside. We, as ground hosting, have over the past 8 years relocated over 6,000 racks. That's around 100,000 public sector physical ICT devices, servers, network, storage, all of the things you would expect in a data center. Everyone worries that because their IT services are both critical and fragile, that relocation is risky. But I can hand on heart say that we've never had a major problem. Unexpected things do happen. There always will. But they're never insurmountable, and they all place unacceptable risk to your services. The second part, worry about change. Well, that's natural. We all want job security. But doing nothing does have a cost. If not now, then in the future. And the other question is, what should your staff be doing to have fulfilling and balanced jobs? It probably does not include what ground hosting provides. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Jason. Okay, without further ado, I'll hand you back to John. John is now going to talk about Soundwave IPA.
Hello again, guys. Now, Soundwave, second beer we ever brewed. We've been brewing it for 10 years now. If you were to pick any beer that we spent the most time on, it's Soundwave. Our head brewer every week and several of our brew teams sit down, taste it, make sure it's tasting absolutely fantastic. As I mentioned earlier, it's what we call our flagship IPA. I mean, if you didn't know, this is Soundwave's logo right behind me there to give you an idea of how much we bang on about it. We've literally got a flag for it. So West Coast IPA, we are well known for our West Coast IPAs. Our yeast strain is a Vermont yeast strain, which really leads itself to West Coast IPAs. Again, workhorse of the brewing world, Maris Otter malt you've got in there. You've also got some dextrin malt that's used generally in actually darker beers. Again, we're putting it in there to kind of balance that bitterness and give that really nice mouthfeel and body to the beer. We also use a very small bit of wheat in there. The reason we use wheat in that beer is actually for the retention of your head. That foam you've got on top, that's a really vitally important part of your beer. So we want that to be lasting as long as possible down your glass. Hopefully you poured it out and that froth is staying lovely on the top there. If not, then maybe the glasses need a clean. So again, we're using a variety of hops in there. We're using what we like to call the 3 Cs, which is Citra, Chinook, and Columbus. Citra, not surprisingly enough with its name, is giving some pretty good citrusy flavors in there. Also really nice bitter kind of pithy flavors. Chinook, really again kind of adding that kind of pine spice, a bit of grapefruit citrusy there, citrusiness in there as well. And then Columbus, really again just finding that punchy bitterness as well. This Soundwave, as you know, if you're tasting it, I hope you agree with me, really takes everything that makes what Lumina is and just amps it up. Those hop flavors are coming through strongly. The ABV 5.6 does unfortunately put it out of the sessionable category. You can't have many of those before needing to head to bed or needing a little nap, and without having a sore head the next day, which is the last thing you want after a few beers. Then we also use Simcoe, which is another American hop introduced back in the early 2000s by the big boys of the hop world, which is a company called Yakima Chief, based over in the US. And again, that's really adding those sort of earthy, grapefruity, herby kind of flavors. we're really proud of Soundwave and everything that is associated with us. It really emphasizes who we are as a brewery, ties in with our yeast strain, ties in with what we're all about as a brewery. And to give you an idea of how many hops we're bunging in there, there's 25 grams of hops for every litre of beer. So in your can there alone, you've got about 8 grams of hops, which is a pretty big amount for any beer, especially one at 5.6%. It's the one we're most famed for. If you ask anyone about the country, oh, do you know Siren? They're probably going to be talking about Soundwave. So I hope you're all enjoying it there, guys. Just to say, if anyone's got any questions they want to fire at me or anything like that, if you're able to put messages in the chat, feel free to do so. It may not surprise you to learn, being the Tap Yard general manager, that I do like talking about beer. So please stop me if I'm going on too long. But I'll leave you to try, leave you to taste, and hopefully you'll enjoy it as much as we do.
Thank you, John. Hope you're all enjoying Soundwave. Okay, now we'll move on to Steve Hall, Chief Executive Officer of Crown Hosting, the data centers. And Steve, the floor is yours.
Yeah, thanks.
Steve kicked off early, by the way, so forgive him.
Yeah, I was toying with putting a DJ on and acting out Sir Les Patterson at the start of this, but thank you very much for that, and thank you for giving me the opportunity to talk today. For those of you that know me, hello everybody. It's been quite a while. Hi Stephen, I know you're on the call. It's been about 10 years since we last spoke at least, but good to see you on. So let's get into this, because I've not got too much time and I've got a fair bit to cover in the 5 slides that I've got. So next slide, please, Beth. Thank you. So actually, that is our current purpose. Crown Hosting was set up in 2015 when the Cabinet Office and government IT policy was myopically cloud first, or cloud only, as most people have called it. And Crown Hosting, frankly, was only put in place to address those legacy systems that were tied to an infrastructure that couldn't remediate into the cloud. And it was seen as being a solution for 4 years by GDS at the time. I have to say, we felt differently, partly because a number of us had done IT delivery and realised that you can't just click your fingers and change from one environment to the other. And we saw Crown Hosting as the transformation platform for the right digital solution in the future, whatever that may be. So original framework was really only there to provide a hosting solution for legacy infrastructure. As Jason touched on, policy, experience, hindsight has all played its part. And there's been what could be perceived as a subtle, but it's actually a fundamental change in policy now, where it is recognised, and I think, putting it into my words, there's more of a data-first strategy now, where the advice is to get your arms around your data, have control of that, and choose the appropriate platform for the outcome that you're seeking in the right place, right time, and right cost. So I'm going to talk a bit more about Framework 2, the future, in the slide after this one. So our purpose now really is to generate savings, reduce carbon footprint through the infrastructure that's there, commoditize the data center to enable transformation to either the hybrid, private, or public clouds. And we do that by freeing you from all legacy contracts where you're tied to particular network providers, particular infrastructure providers, hardware providers, etc., etc. Crown Hosting is completely agnostic. We don't care what kit you bring in. We've never failed to be able to host any infrastructure whatsoever, whether it's new or old. We have a large number of network providers, and for those that have tried to stand up new network providers, you know it will take 6 to 9 months to get them to pop a site. We've got them all there. They're on very competitive terms. They're SLA services. So really, all the tools that you need to deliver your transformed infrastructure is there. As Jason touched on, it's a very flexible commercial solution. There's no lock-in, termination for convenience, fully transparent reporting, and capped and collared indexation. So we believe, and we've seen a number of both large, medium and small organisations use Crown Hosting as that proverbial platform for genuine digital transformation. And I guess the standout example is Department of Work and Pensions, who've really used us as almost like a conveyor belt, where they've fed in their legacy infrastructure and applications, and they've taken time to remediate those that need and are worth remediating, and then moving those to either a hybrid or public cloud. And the rest they've kept on private infrastructure with Crown Hosting. Next slide, please. So we're a bit, we've had a few new customers come in, so we're about 24 megawatts of power, well over 100 customers, probably conservatively saved at least £2 billion back to the public sector. But it's genuinely a tip of the iceberg. What frustrates me and frustrates CCS and frustrates other people is the reluctance of people to move out of their legacy facilities and realise all of those savings. So uptake is slow because, frankly, people are reluctant to change, and they will try everything to stay where they are, whether that be in their own office space, in a server room, or in an old and creaking legacy facility. But that's our challenge to address. Next slide, please. So framework 2 is, I think the first bullet here is absolutely spot on. It's evolution, not revolution. A lot about framework 1 was great, but the feedback was, this is great, but we don't know how to leave our legacy provider. And we don't have the knowledge, we don't have the time, and we don't have the people to do it. So working with CCS, we've put that into the Crown Hosting 2 framework. So you can buy that expertise that Jason touched on earlier and completely de-risk that element of the program. Likewise, at the other end of the life timescale, we have more what we call smart hands, on-site support, which is a richer and SLA'd service to alleviate you of that need to come and carry out tasks on your own infrastructure. And the third area of evolution was what we're here to talk about today, was bringing in the hyperscale and people like Trust, who have a pedigree in providing hybrid solutions. So going back to a data first strategy, your data's at rest in Crown Hosting. So bring the cloud to your data rather than lose control of your data, put it in the cloud and then not be able to off ramp it in the future if that becomes an economic solution for you. Next slide, please. So as I said, the hybrid is an important element for Crown Hosting as we move forward into the next 7 years of the framework. We, stating the obvious, if you've got the cloud that's come to you, the latency and the ability for you to, if you like, spoof some of the old applications that need very close proximity to their workloads, you can actually run them in a cloud environment now with your data at rest in Crown Hosting. It's more secure, it's cheaper, and it's faster to provision as well because everything's on site. Next slide, please. If you just press through this, please, Beth, it should build. So this is just a visual representation that we've tried to bring everything together into one community where you can choose what managed service you want from who. And I'll come back to this again. You having control of your data gives you choice. If your service provider lets you down or becomes uneconomic, you are in control of your data, and you can easily swap them out or swap your network provider or swap your hardware provider at your next tech refresh. So it's all about control, and that's what the framework through the governance of CCS gives you. That's all I'm going to cover, Beth. I've just about run out of my track beer. It's very good. Thank you very much. I enjoyed that one. I'll be moving on to the next in a second. Thank you.
Thank you, Steve. Really appreciate your time and your insight. Okay, so to a lot of people on the call today, trust systems will be a name that is probably not on everybody's list. It hasn't been a familiar name in the public sector. So I think it's only right I start off with a little bit of a background as to why we're at the table and why we're here today talking about hybrid services for the public sector. Myself, as I mentioned at the start of this evening's events, Chris and a number of my colleagues have been working together in this industry for over 30 years. And during that time, we've been progressing our solutions very much in the enterprise space around corporations, large and small. And over the years, we've been developing a lot of skills around hybrid platforms. Some of those technologies have come and gone. But we have prevailed to persist following, as an independent vendor, best of breed practices and best of breed technologies. And it will come as no surprise to a number of people that Nutanix is very much a part and at the heart of our technology solutions for hybrid today, especially for IaaS and the virtualization capabilities and security capabilities and dexterity that it brings to hybrid environments. So when Crown Hosting were looking for partners to develop a platform for yourselves and other parts of the public sector, we were fished out of a very big pond. And to give you a little bit of background and credence to why we're here, some of our clients in the corporate world are global. And our largest client in the portfolio, somebody I've traded with for over 15 years now, and have managed credit card solutions for them in dark sites with dark fiber between them, and all the things that work around those solutions are, in one case, they are over 100 billion in their annual turnover. So if you think about your data and your customer data, because I'm part of the public sector, as we all on this call, we're customers. And that integrity of looking after people's data is absolutely paramount in facilitating a cloud service. And where we have been highlighted in a number of cases is our ability to drive not only good value platforms, but also secure, capable and dexterous environments that people can land an application, but also pivot when they need to, because nothing is a set in stone strategy. Every strategy starts off with the intention of staying on a line, but it has to meld as things change. And you only have to look at the world we've experienced in the last 3 or 4 years to really comprehend just why flexible and dexterous services are absolutely paramount in any organization. So if you keep in the back of your mind some of the things that we're going to cover in my session and also Chris's session, they may not have been delivering services to your colleagues in the public sector, but they have been delivering them for many years and continue to. We have multi-year contracts running out to 2028 in some cases with clients that we've been with for many years. And remember that brand value that they carry. They have customers, they have a brand that's worth billions, and they don't trust it with anybody. And that, I think, is at the core of why we think that we're a good partner for yourselves going forwards. Next slide, please. So the current landscape, here are a number of facts. They're not trusts data sources. These are gathered from all the erstwhile corners of and givers of information to our sector. Gartner is amongst the contributors to this sort of data. Obviously, cloud computing is 10 years old or more. I've been doing hybrid cloud for nearly 30 years now. I started on IBM mid-range technology and have progressed as the Microsoft world has encapsulated our lives. Cloud failures are higher in UK public sector compared to the private sector. Now, please don't look in my direction for the originator of that. As I said before, that is a fact that somebody else is delivering to the table in today's conversation based on a number of pieces of research that have been done. I think it's wrong to sit and rest on our laurels and let that persist. You know, something has to change, and that's why the government has reached out to try and bring different skill sets to the market, different approaches, and it's not all about one fits all. We're not going to be the right thing for everybody. We won't be the only fit for your data set. That is the reason why hybrid is the order of the day. And in many respects, what we want to be is a progression to a hyperscaler perhaps for you. But some of that data might reside with us longer than you might first plan, because you see it's better value, better fit, it's more secure. And there's a lot of other practical things which we'll touch on over the next few minutes that will give you lead to understand why that might be the case. There's big numbers on this slide, 16 billion spent by UK public sector on IT every year. And I think in Steve's part, he was talking about the successes they've had and the £2 billion saving they've had since a number of people have headed in their direction. But it's a fraction. It is a drop in the ocean to the total amount of IT that's actually out there. And the more we've spent over the last 18 months talking and engaging with public sector, the more I've found that hospitals have got data centers next to wards. They've got their DR for that data center across the corridor in the same part of the faculty. And that, in anybody's world, can't be the ideal way and the future. And we're here to try and help those people, not criticize, but challenge the process to say there is an alternative, and it's an easy migration path, and it's an affordable journey for you. 53% of the UK public sector decision makers believe their data is stored on infrastructure that's no longer fit for purpose. Well, if that's the case, they have choices. So a lot of people have headed to hyperscalers over the last 10 years. For some, it's been a resounding success. For others, it hasn't. And as the figure says there about the amount of people that have had failure, a lot of that has been the inability to control the budget. Their expectations in some cases that we've been engaged with have been 30% out of their budgeted expectations on landing. So a lot of data, a lot of stats, but they're all relevant to where you are today. But the good news is there are choices and there are alternatives. As I said before, we're not the only one, but we'd love to have a look at people's challenges and talk to them about how they can be overcome. Next slide, please. Every one of us is setting out on a journey, and in that journey, you're looking for key drivers. And these are some of these key drivers why people will be seeking to look at strategies and cloud strategies as part of that technology shift. Chris and I both spoke at an NHS event up in Staffordshire only last week. And I think one of the key messages and some of the resounding conversations was all about getting funds to frontline services. And IT in any organization is a huge cost. It's complex. It's being hit by more and more complexity and challenges. Security is absolutely one of the biggest. But you just look at the cost of power and the way that's hit our world in the last couple of years, and a lot of people's inability to control the cost of that as it's escalated. And that has hurt a lot of people's ability and stifled a lot of people's ability in the public sector to move some of that budget through to frontline services. So what we bring to the table is a lot more predictability. I'm not here to say that I will be able to control power costs endlessly, but we can give a period of stability and a period of predictability. Added to the other value propositions that we bring, all in all, it's a better value proposition for you if a high focus of your strategy is better commercial management. So I won't touch on every part of this, but the trends are there to be seen. Everybody's talking about digital transformation. It means a lot of different things to different people. And one of the benefits that we rolled into ours, and I'll touch on it later in one of the slides, is we're not just a landing place for your applications, whether they are your operational applications or whether you just see us as a good option for DR or a test environment. And we can be one or many of those. But we're also bringing some solutions of our own, which we run as microservices. And I'll touch on those, which will help people's strategy, because it's not just about landing your heritage applications. It's about, well, what is the next application that you need? And I think we got some thought-provoking views on that. Next slide, please, Beth. So, obstacles, the blockers. Why do people not come to the cloud? Well, a lot of it is they'll sit down with a strategy and say, well, we can't do this because we can't have that. We don't have enough money for this. I don't have enough skills. I don't have enough time. I'm concerned about data privacy concerns. I'm concerned about whether my legacy will actually operate in somebody else's environment. All of these are all valid. And what we have set out from the start is to be able to sit down and consult and overcome these challenges and blockers, to push them to one side, not to forget them and ignore them, but to push them to one side to say, we've got them covered. And working in collaboration with your team, we can take you on a journey to the cloud. Next slide, please. So how do we overcome those blockers? Well, everybody who's on a digital journey needs flexibility and scalability and agility, because I've seen a lot of programs of work start. We started on a new 5-year campaign with a client who's worked with myself personally for over 30 years in the retail world. And we were pulling 3 lots of environments from 3 different data centers, and also their head offices in London, together in one platform. It was a multitude of different technologies. Nutanix was looking after the heart of the IaaS, and IBM Power Systems were looking after some long-standing applications that I have known and I have worked with that client for, as I say, 30 years now. And we put that together, but even during the program of work, which was about a 4 or 5 month landing ground, their strategy changed. They saw opportunities in the market and they wanted to be agile. So the program needed to be able to absorb those without stopping and without inhibiting the program to success for the core applications that were delivering services for that business in the day-to-day world. I mentioned security before. You just cannot ignore it. I remember sending out proposals to people in the client world 15 years ago, and the first thing that the CFO would do would strike out security because it looked like it was a cost saving. No, I need to provision data. I need storage. I need to be able to churn the end of month processing. I need to be able to achieve day-to-day processing. Or security, I don't have the money for that. Well, that is not on the table now. You cannot strike out security. So just as important as turning the dial on data performance to serve the data users and data consumers, security and resilience absolutely is alongside. And in our design and in our build and the experience we bring to the table, is giving you that out of the box. Again, shifting sand in our world today, demonstrable sustainability is right at the core of everything that we're trying to do. Jason had some heady numbers about CO2 emissions and the savings that the Crown environment has achieved in recent past. There is a lot more to be done. There's a lot of applications running on environments that are just not adding to that saving at the moment. If in fact it's eroding it, and really that can't be ignored. Value for money, it has to be on the agenda. Again, as Jason and Steve alluded to, we've gone through quite some rigor, not only technically from some of the higher echelons of technical capability within the Cabinet Office, but also there's been a lot of rigor in us meeting the requirements of the framework. So again, you can buy with confidence that you're buying something that's been vetted and is fit for purpose and will save you money. We are flexible. OPEX doesn't suit everybody, CAPEX doesn't suit everybody. It may be one or the other, but we can do a blend. And some of the programs of work that we're working on at the moment, there is a capital expenditure at the beginning that they may have because there's budget spare, but going forwards they want predictable OPEX spend. So we can blend our commercial terms to suit your affordability and your fiscal plans. We are experts in the cloud field. Day by day, our team is swelling. We're delighted to have a couple of people join us in very recent past who've got vast experience in this field. So it isn't a static team here at Trust. We truly have an investment plan to match your expectations and growth capabilities for our business. And I love where we are today. The invite that we got 18 months ago to come and get involved in the program and go through the vetting process and put our name forward and go through the processes that we have that have been quite rigorous, to be fair. For us to be able to say that we're established now in a sovereign data center is something we as a business, and me particularly, I'm very proud of. Next slide, please. So going back to some of the blockers and some of the challenges that people have when they are driving a cloud strategy is, well, I've picked my hosting provider, but how do I now go and get a connectivity partner? Do I bring one that's part of my current relationship? Do they have the capability? Are they where I want to be? How long will that take me? What's the cost? Is there interoperability? Can I get these partners to work together for me? And so many people start off on a strategy and it falls apart because they're trying to glue a number of people who didn't know each other together as part of that journey. And a lot of people will sign up to it and say, yeah, I'm fine. Yes, we'll work with your partners and everything's great. But it's not proven in many cases. There isn't the harmony, there isn't the understanding, there isn't the history, and there aren't the communications modules between those businesses. Well, that bit again has been taken care of. So in the Crown environments, there are a plethora of providers like ourselves, but there's also a plethora of value-added service providers, not least of all security and connectivity. So don't let this be a blocker for you. This will speed up your journey to the cloud. And if anything, it'll lower the cost and reduce the pressure on your teams in the enablement of the service. Next slide, please. Talked a bit about finance and some of the things that we can control and some of the things that challenge us on a daily basis. I hate to underline it, but interest rates are not where we'd like them to be and not where we've enjoyed them being for a long time, especially if you were a borrower and a spender. Inflation is at a level that we haven't seen for a long time, and there's no real signs that it's actually going to return to where it was 2-3 years ago in any short period of time. Constrained resources. Last year, as a service provider in this market, we were busy, but I couldn't facilitate everything that I wanted to do because I couldn't get hold of product. And product sourcing for people who are on a cloud journey of their own, or they're doing a localized walled garden solution on their own premises or their own data center service, have also been challenged massively and will continue to be. And what our service does is take some of this unpredictability and risk away. We've got access to product. We have access to data center space. We've got access to network services. We have the resources to facilitate a migration strategy. And therefore, the financial case comes together a lot more succinctly because you're in control of it. If you're not in control of your supply chain and your partners, then you are not in control of your fiscal spend. And we aim to give you the ability to control that and have credibility both within your organizations and within the public sector to deliver on time and on budget. Data lifespan is a big issue for people. No doubt a lot of you are on the call today, and many of your colleagues out in the wider public sector world will be looking at a heritage system today with a plan, some with a knowledge of what that plan looks like to move to the next application. But in a cloud strategy, it's not always clear whether what you're going to do today will be fit for purpose tomorrow. And in our planning and in our strategy, we are aiming to give you something that you can move a legacy application to today, something that will improve its cost and its efficiency and its security and its predictability in service life. But at the same time can pivot and be reused and repurposed once you've landed your new applications. So do not think that the Trust Cloud solution is a dead end if you're just going to bring something for 2 years and in year 3 you're looking to migrate to a new application. Providing that application is going to draw on the same type of resources, a Microsoft environment, for example, in a virtualized environment, then we are very much fit for purpose and will give you longevity. Next slide, please. I keep mentioning some of the things we can't ignore, some of the things that weren't on the agenda, some of the things that did not appear in proposals for many years in all walks of life. But social value is huge. And I'm delighted that, you know, now the SME providers, which Trust is very much a part of, is being recognised by government as being valuable and being able to offer something different to the market. And hopefully through these initiatives and events like this, we're getting an opportunity to talk to you and show you that we can deliver. If we can deliver for $100 billion annual turnover corporation, we can certainly deliver for yourselves. We are based in the UK. We're based in Gloucestershire. We employ local people. And we also, interestingly, supply data center services to the data centers that are in your mind's eye today. So one of the other reasons why we're at the table, and one of the endorsements that we were given, was that for a number of years we've provided services that have underpinned the networks and the infrastructure that supplies the resilience and the reliability to the data centers. And that is another pillar of the Trust business. And that, in many respects, brought us into view of a number of people to say, well, you're doing this extremely well, what else do you do? And when we showed them our cloud capabilities, it raised a number of eyebrows and it raised a lot of interest. So, you know, we are a business that is strong on culture. I was an apprentice too many moons ago, 40 odd years ago, and I value that. It got me on the road to where I am today. So apprenticeships and T-level are very much at the forefront of our business. And if anybody was to walk in the business today, you would meet 3 or 4 people immediately who are going through apprentices and the T-levels with us. It does help that we're across the road from a local college, so they're a great feeder for us for talent. One of the things in the social value is, and Jason and Steve both touched on this, is people are worried that if they go on a cloud strategy, that's their job gone, their colleagues' jobs gone. And we think differently. We think about repurposing. We think about getting people delivering things that are more important than managing some IT platform. You know, getting more time and attention to the performance of the database, getting more time and attention to the service requirements of the user base, and also the extended user base that is out there, the customers, the public. And I think that's really where the repurposing should be focused. And therefore, people shouldn't be afraid of a cloud strategy. They should be embracing it and looking at the opportunities that they brings them personally, but also the wider organization. Accessing our team, we have a human touch. We've been fighting our merry way through the corporate world for many years, winning business. And that is no mean feat to survive and thrive. So, you know, we've got a lot of experiences. We're not tied at the mast to one technology. We embrace and look around the world for the best technologies to blend and meld into our hybrid services. So we're taking away some of the sting and some of the challenges that you have because we've got that broader church view of the technology world. And equal opportunities are really important. And our business, I'm very happy to say, has got a very strong focus on that. Next slide, please. I won't dwell on this too long. A number of big numbers have been shouted out about environmental benefits of cloud. You can be rest assured that we've been following the challenges that have been laid down by COP, net zero, and the ultimate reduction of emissions. So everything that we've designed and everything that we have put in place have paid homage to this. It isn't lip service, it is factual, it's demonstrable. And in an audit process, we will stand tall and tick the boxes for you, which in many respects, let's be honest, cannot be being achieved by a number of installations that are out there in the wider world today. Next slide, please. So, a business case and a value add. Platform security, absolutely at the pinnacle of everything that we have to do. Business resiliency. You know, if there are people out there today who just want an alternative to where they are going to store their DR environments, because your migration strategy and your cloud strategy is going to take you some time. We fully understand that. But sometimes getting an outpost, getting a position where you can be satisfied that data is safe and it's in a sovereign environment and it is protected is valid. So come and test it. Come and test us. It's a great way of putting your toe in the water. Everything that we have put together and everything that Jason has talked about and everything that Steve has talked about is all about assurance that the environment's fit for purpose, that the technology is fit for purpose. I mentioned our partners who are part of today's proceedings, Nutanix. They're not resting on their laurels. They're developing new technologies. They're giving more flexible, more dexterous capabilities to our platform day by day. And that is going to bring a number of benefits. It will ultimately reduce the cost of ownership. It'll allow us to do more with less. And that has to be a fundamental driver in what we're trying to achieve on a cloud strategy. If I talk about trust additional value, I talked about our experience. I'm not on this call for all the reasons you can imagine going to mention particular names that I've alluded to, but they are referenceable. Their directors will speak highly of us, and they are available to you. Flexible payment models, I touched on that. OpEx, CapEx, a blend. Microservices, I am passionate about this. Our Trust Cloud product that we relaunched a few years ago has within it a number of microservices from digital asset management. So if you want to bring your digital assets to present onto screens around your public sector environments, whether that's hospital notice boards, whether that's something in a council office that's giving vital information to the public, then we have the capability within this infrastructure to deliver microservices, so we can give you better value for our engagement and our relationship. And one of the latest things that we're bringing to the table, and something that was absolutely fundamental in everybody's conversation that we had within the NHS event, is what is now being talked about as O2C, the order to cash processes. Every one of the people on the call today will have an order to cash process in their business because they buy things, whether it's just office stationery or whether it is pharmaceutical goods or clinical goods in the NHS. People are buying things from a supply chain. They have a logistics challenge, and our fully digitized O2C platform is a game changer. Again, it's been tested in the corporate world. It's just been adopted by one of the largest food and beverage producers in the world. And again, it's referenceable and demonstrable. So anybody who has any challenges with digital data, image data, digital signs, microservices, we have cloud services which are enterprise class and capable. And last but not least, I'll talk here about our operational staff and the value. We run a 24/7 network operations centre. It's based here in Gloucestershire. It's not an overseas service. Language is not a problem for us. There is a slight West Country lilt to it, I have to be honest. But even as a staunch and proud Lancastrian, I've managed to operate in that environment for many years. So hopefully that won't be a blocker for anybody on the call today. But people are very much a heart of this. It's not just a technology solution. We are offering a service. And one of the things we want to leave you with is that peace of mind that when you close the door on the office and when you close your laptops, that there are people looking at your environments who are skilled, who have, you know, the hard yards under their belt, and are more than capable of looking after your data in a safe and secure environment. Next slide, please. So to close my part, I really want to summarize. We are a bridge to the cloud. We are hybrid. If we're just taking a part of your environment, if we are just a landing place for you to test cloud environments and cloud workloads, and then move to a hyperscaler, we'd be delighted to talk to you. We are not a one-fits-all. We're here to be malleable, we're here to be understanding, and we're here to consult with you. But ultimately, I think you'll find that we're a great resting place for a range of solutions that you currently have within your own infrastructure, within your own buildings. And we'd be delighted to talk about what is fit for purpose to stay in one place and what is fit for purpose to move to somewhere else. And we'll always give you a very honest and open opinion on that. We call ourselves Trust and we live by it. So please remember, cloud is not an operating model. Sorry, cloud is an operating model, not a location. Sorry, the first scripted piece I go to and I can't read it. So maybe the beer's kicking in. Thank you very much for your time. I'm now going to hand over to Chris, who will give you a little bit of the technology. Oh, sorry, we're going to Ricochet. Sorry, John, I'm skipping your third beer.
Quite all right, quite all right.
Woe is me, woe is me. Sorry,
it bounced off me. Let it bounce off me.
Did you bounce off that there? Sorry about that.
Indeed. No problem at all.
Ladies and gentlemen, I'll hand you back to John, who's going to talk about Ricochet Pilsner.
Fantastic. Hello again, everyone. Hope you've been enjoying the beers. I saw someone sipping on the Doing Science there, which was one of our extra ones as well. So Ricochet. So we're moving away from what we call our core range, Soundwave and Lumina beers we brew all the time, as we say. Ricochet is a little bit of our you know, a bit of a special one, a bit of a one-off that, well, we may well rebrew it if it goes well, and we'd like to think it's gone very well. So now Ricochet, we call it a West Coast Pilsner. Now, I don't know how many people in here are beery people, but if you are, that will, as a term that will greatly confuse you. West Coast, generally a term that refers to IPAs. Pilsner, generally a term that refers to lagers. The reason we call that is basically what we've done is we've taken those two styles and smashed them together. So what you've got in the Ricochet there, you've got the kind of crisp snappiness you get from a Pilsner, but then you also have the really nice sort of hoppy flavors you get from a IPA as well. You know, without going too far into the technical side of brewing and boring you all and putting you to sleep, ales are brewed in a warm fermenting environment. Lagers are brewed in a cold fermenting environment. So what we've done with this beer is we've cold fermented it, but we've also added those hops in as well to really bring the flavors. You know, it's something we've done to coincide perfectly, I like to think, with the weather getting lovely. I hope you've all been enjoying this lovely weather, and the Ricochet Pilsner is an absolutely perfect beer for that weather. So, you know, again, we're using that workhorse malt there. We've got Maris Otter malt in there. Again, we've got a little bit of wheat in there as well for the mention. We've got a little bit of oats in there again for the mouth feel. We're coming back to a hop I mentioned before, Citra, which again, you know, really lovely citrusy flavors from there. US hop there, Simcoe as well. I think we spoke about earlier as well, the 3 S's, you know, really giving those lovely punchy flavors as well. We've also taken some hops from over in New Zealand, Nelson Sauvin. You know, obviously sounding quite similar to Sauvignon Blanc, which the New Zealand wine world is famed for. That Nelson Sauvin really adds a lot of the flavors you'd expect to find in a New Zealand Sauvignon Blanc. To be honest, you're talking gooseberries, you're talking those kind of really nice tropical flavors. I recently just actually returned myself on a trip from Italy. I took a few cans of this over to Italy with me and enjoyed a few of them on a very sunny beach. So we all close our eyes and envision being on a sunny beach and take a sip of the Ricochet. I think that's pretty much what we've been aiming for the beer. Yes, I think that's all to say about Ricochet really there. I say hopefully you're all enjoying it there.
Lovely. Thank you, John. Really appreciate that. Okay, next on the agenda is the future proofing of your cloud strategy, and I'll hand you over into the safe hands of Chris Boys, our Chief Operating Officer. Thank you, Chris.
Thanks very much, Mike. Don't worry, John, I will be trying a beer later. If anybody's noticed me having a sip of water, it's because of 2 reasons. 1, I need to make sense at this juncture in the webinar, and 2, I'll be driving shortly, but I will be having that and thinking of being on the beach later. So thanks for the notes there, John. So what I'd like to do now is just really try and bring into context where Trust Cloud, how Trust Cloud operates, and take you through really a mirror of what Jason and Steve were talking in terms of delivery models. So starting with the client-side environment, that's really your own computer room or the smaller hosting facilities that don't have the economies of scale that Steve alluded to look where the workloads should sit. Though we do manage some of these environments as a remote managed service from our service desk, because certain clients may be rationalizing their environment prior to migration. So it is an element that that Trust Cloud stretches into, and I'll come on to how we do that shortly. So the main element that we're working with Crown Hosting and the Cabinet Office piece on is our private cloud facility. Obviously, we've covered off the main details of that in terms of sovereignty, security, and the efficiencies that brings to Trust Cloud. That's where we're providing the stepping stone into the public cloud. So we can also provide a Trust Cloud component in the public cloud with all the main hyperscalers as part of a hybrid cloud solution or journey, for not necessarily all the way from left to right, and to ultimately put workloads where they need to sit. So we've set that up in the auspice of the frameworks offered by Crown Hosting, the government DDAT initiatives, and to make sure we're on those procurement routes that you'd be using to look at this. So the final piece there that's appeared is that there's a with the Crown Hosting ecosystem, there is an element of partners that are on-prem within Crown Hosting data centers. So that includes the major hyperscalers, as Steve alluded to, that allow you to run a cloud workload, but in Crown Hosting. And then that's ideal for hybrid cloud because we can get around latency problems by patching connectivity from Trust Cloud to a hyperscaler down the hall in the same facility or between facilities, as well as the more traditional on-ramps that you might use to link a private cloud in Crown Hosting into the public cloud. So we can move on to the hybrid cloud enablers. Primarily, that's led by connectivity. So we've already mentioned within the data center, we look after those facilities. We look after the building management platforms and networks that provide that across all of these data centers. So we're very au fait as Trust Networks at looking after that. Trust Cloud team work closely with those consultants and can provide the hybrid connectivity within the Crown Hosting facilities. But then on a inter-cloud basis, we can provide the comms, whether that's from client-side environments to enable the cloud migration or to allow workloads to be siphoned from client-side into the private cloud in the center, and then ultimately to provide the on-ramps into the public cloud and allow workloads to move in and out of the public cloud, depending on the various parameters like costs, flexibility, how elastic those workloads are, and ultimately put the right workload in the right location for the client. The next element is to provide a consistent cloud platform in terms of a single pane of glass to manage that, whether that's from a hypervisor perspective through to public cloud management. And what that does is it allows us to facilitate the movement of workloads from one element to the other. So leveraging the Nutanix with our kind of special sauce around connectivity and the unrivaled connectivity that Steve alluded to in Crown Hosting, that's really the pivot or the step that allows us to join together these private cloud solutions. Okay, so just to underpin that, we've got hardware vendors based around running Nutanix on both Supermicro and Lenovo. So we've got enterprise class infrastructure there. We can also provide, because of our investment in that environment, we've got the dedicated platforms that we can provide a proof of concept on to allow any concerns or to test, typically in a 4-week timescale, a particular client's use case, and make sure that they're confident before they take the step into a full migration to make sure that that's fit for purpose and meets their expectations. So how do we deliver Trust Cloud? Ultimately, it's frameworks driven, and you don't have to pick between evolution and revolution. You can go at your own pace. Some clients just want to do that for a single workload, but ultimately we're trying to accelerate that process and help people have an efficient and agile discovery to make sure that we understand what the requirement is, and more specifically what your environment is and the specifics to your needs as an organization, because everybody's at a different stage and everybody's got a certain set of parameters that are pretty much unique to them. We've spoke to and solutioned and provide services to many of those clients, so we've got a broad experience in what's worked in previous scenarios. What we operate is in conjunction with the proof of concept is a sprint process then to allow movement from a proof of concept into production in the environments that I showed on the previous slide. So moving from that life cycle approach, it can be iterative depending on scale. So you can do it on a project by project basis, or you can work out, as I call them, the chess moves, which is looking at workloads, their dependency on locations, latency, and other workloads that are not just siloed, to make sure that they can move in a logical fashion. So we typically get involved in the discovery process in order to do that, to allow a planning process, and look at whether or not we need, what the business technology needs and dependencies are on those workloads. There's a commercial aspect to that. We can get involved in total cost of ownership considerations if that's part of the equation. But ultimately, we want to go through technically what's required to make that a seamless process, and that gets into the migration planning. During that, typically we then surface any elements that haven't been covered by a proof of concept or haven't been covered in the initial planning stage, and then meld that into a proof of concept to make sure we've got an agreed acceptance criteria which we can sign that up on. Typically, as I say, that's a 4-week process. At the moment, we've got some availability for that, but that's subject to demand at the time that you come along with your specific use case. But that's typically, a lot of customers might be looking at that for a single workload, for 2 reasons. One, because their existing supplier or their existing infrastructure won't support it, but also because a lot of organisations are looking at not having all their eggs in one basket in terms of a single private cloud, or leveraging the benefits that we've discussed earlier in the presentation. So in terms of productions, they're normally iterative per workload. And then in parallel with those, as the workloads move across, as Chess moves, we get involved in the acceptance into service between the project management team and the service delivery manager for that client, so that they're aware of the components that are moving across into service, in terms of the ongoing managed service that we provide, but also ongoing then changes to that environment, as Mike's alluded to, in terms of things don't remain static for very long, and there might be removal of some environments and addition of others, and we get that into the operate life cycle of the managed service. So I hope this section's given you a flavour of the what and the how from a Trust Cloud perspective, and where Trust can help you future-proof your cloud strategy. We'd be happy to review that on a one-to-one basis with you, because, as I've said, it's very specific to your scenario, and we would like to have those discrete conversations where possible. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Chris. Okay, next slide, Beth, please, if you wouldn't mind. Okay, so I have a very short summary. I think we've talked long and hard about the value proposition, the fit for purpose environment, some of the drivers, some of the blockers, some of the reasons why people want to go to cloud, some of the reasons why they are shy of going to the cloud. But all in all, hopefully we've given you some confidence to look in our direction and look at an alternative way of approaching the challenge. Really, what we're trying to do is structure a cloud strategy that fits your organization and allows you to focus on your core services. I go back to that NHS event that they were really saying they can't increase the size of the budget, so all you can do is shrink your cost base. And by doing that, you can move more money to frontline services. And we hope that we will be able to be part of the numbers that Steve was talking about, where the savings are reaching multi-billions, not just 2 or 3, but many more besides. And I'll be really proud if in a number of years that number's really ticking along, and a number of people here have listened today, had the confidence to do something different, and come and talk to us. So next slide, please, Beth. So the Q&A here is, do you want to hear more about cloud, or do you want to hear more about beer? So I'm guessing John's packed for the day, or he's gone to try and get his hops in line. Oh, there he is. Thank you, John.
No, I'm still here if required.
So if anybody's got any questions, I'm here. Chris is here, Steve's here, Jason's here. We've had a few that we've managed through the course of the conversation. but I'm happy. I won't be upset if anybody wants to talk more about beer at this stage than Cloud. If you have a look at this fine figure, he's been honed on many beers for many years. So the floor is yours. If you're a little shy or it's a little difficult to ask in an open channel, by all means, drop us a note and we will get in touch with you personally. There was a question earlier, Jason, which I think you gave Adrian an answer to, which was around fit for purpose for secret and for encrypted data. Do you want to touch on that a little more?
Yeah, I heard you say that the answer is yes. Sorry, touch on it as the. I'm only 2 beers in. This is quite strong, though. Nice, pretty tea. Thank you very much.
Sorry.
But yeah, secret's fine. We can host that. And Steve also popped up with that cryptographic material. There is a service associated with that as well.
Thank you. Okay. Thank you for the fruit juices. Beautiful. Okay. A couple of common questions. These are slightly staged, but I think they're fit for purpose. So a couple of things that I think might have been answered. What's the timeline to a POC, for example? We need a discovery phase. That can be short. It doesn't have to be long and complicated. What we would, could somebody just answer that as a question about contacting trust? Thank you. But we can certainly handle, a discovery and a proof of concept within a 4-week period. As I said before, it's currently free of charge, so make the most of that time period. Other questions that we've had is how can we support DR requirements? And one of the great values that we want to bring to the table is a lot of DR budgets are just burnt on very soundly, there's no doubt about that, environments that may never get used, and hopefully they don't. And for that reason, what we have evolved is an opportunity to use some of that processing environment for other things. And one of the things in particular we try and encourage people to do is use it for test and development. And if the unfortunate issues arrive where DR needs to be activated, we would simply collapse those test and development environments and bring up the operational environment to facilitate a seamless environment for users. And if you think about it, you're going to your business with 2 challenges, 2 budgets. I need this for test and dev, and I need this for DR. Well, the one thing you can't do is without test and dev, otherwise your business doesn't move forward. And one thing you can't throw to the wind is your DR. So to combine those and maybe release that money for other things in your business has a virtue and is worth exploring. So we'd be delighted to talk about the virtues of that flexibility in the hybrid world. And I also touched on, it is a question, can we use it for different purposes? Well, there's one example, but certainly I touched on it in my piece about meeting the requirements of legacy going out and new environments coming in. And we are absolutely tied to the mast to enable you to do that within the confines of the capabilities of the technology, the platform, and the contractual terms that we have with you. So, one of the things that we're here to do and be is malleable. We're not here to dictate, we're not here to preach, we're here to give guidance, and we're here to try and help you on your journey. So if there's no more questions and everybody's had their fill of beer and the assembled throng, I'd like to thank Jason, I'd like to thank Steve, I'd like to thank my colleague Chris, but most of all I'd like to thank John and his beers all the way from Berkshire. So if anybody's in the Berkshire neck of the woods, please look Siren up. I'm sure they'll be delighted to sell you a crate or 2, or even put a special brew on for you at a particular time. So, John, thank you for the time. And like Chris, I'll be going home and enjoying one of these after the drive. Thank you very much indeed.
You won't be alone then, my friend. Thanks so much for having me, guys. I hope you all enjoyed the beers. And yeah, if you're ever in the area, please do feel free to pop in and see me at the